Good evening. Welcome to the Planning Commission meeting for November 20th.
Recording in progress.
If I could get everybody to stand. Commissioner Malik, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please, City Planner.
Certainly. Chairman Rosales.
Present.
Vice Chair Morrissey, he indicated he wouldn't be available to attend today. Commissioner Balma.
Present.
Commissioner Anthony.
Present.
Commissioner Dodds.
Present.
Commissioner Ogden also indicated he wouldn't be able to attend today. And Commissioner Malik.
Present.
Please let the record show that 5 of the planning commissioners are present and we have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Communications on matters not on tonight's agenda. Do we have any slips to speak?
Yes, Chair Rosales, looks like we have 2.
Great, let's call them forward one by one.
Right. Hang on one second here.
3 minutes to each of the speakers. If you give us your name for the record. Jimmy, come on. Looks like we have Mr. Tenhover first, and then Jimmy after that.
Hello, my name is Mike Tenhover. I live in 873 Waller Drive in Oceanside, California. First, I'll thank the members of the commission here for all your fine work over the years. We really appreciate it. Tonight, I'm representing a fire safety group. We're working to certify our neighborhood into the nationwide Firewise program. We would be the first one in Oceanside to achieve this honor. Part of this process is a very detailed risk assessment, a very complex process. Some of the details are in the handout I just gave you. First off, where's our neighborhood? So you see on that map, even though it's blurry, there's a red splotch there. That's our neighborhood. We're the only neighborhood in Oceanside in the CAL FIRE high-risk fire zone. So a wonderful place to be. We love it. Anyway, this was a shock to us. Our homes weren't designed or built or landscaped to be in a wildfire zone. We never knew we were in there until we started the program. So we have a lot of work ahead of us to do to make our homes safe. We've put together a 3-year plan to make progress. Just as a calibration, our HOA insurance quotes just went up 151% this year. So they understand the risk we're in. Part 2 of the process is to identify areas of concern. Our little community is in blue there, and the homes just next to us we're hoping to bring into the Firewise program once we're certified. The orange areas, however, are the areas of concern for us. You see we're surrounded. This is an area where there's been no brush management. There's tremendous amounts of fuel, canyons, slopes, and very difficult terrain to fight a fire. In addition, we have homeless camps. OPD has told me we have 300 people living in these orange areas. We have off-road illegal vehicle courses. Last year's wall of fire, 33-acre fire, was caused by an off-road vehicle in this area. Other unauthorized activity. And of course, we have the canyons and slopes. So this is a very, very difficult terrain for fire response. Part 3 of the process is the evacuation emergency response. Now we're talking about lives. We have about 5,000 people in that area. Some of them elderly, disabled, et cetera. Now we pull up the map here. There's the same red blotch I told you about, the high fire zone. And you'll note there's only 2 roads in and out of that area. And both of them go through the fire hazard zone. What an amazing situation. Emergency vehicles, evacuation, all have to go through those 2 roads. 5,000 residents. My message tonight is very simple. It's a terrible place for a warehouse. At least wait until we can fortify our home defenses and address those areas of concern and give us time when a fire occurs. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Knott, go ahead.
Chair, Commissioners, Jimmy Knott, 127 Sherry Lane. I wanted to first let you know that on the daily calendar for the city, if you go to that website and you can plug in for the Planning Commission, it will take you to a page where it says Planning Commission, but will not tell you what the agenda is and will not take you to the agenda for this commission. So you may want to look at that and address that for the public. That's number one. Number two is that I don't know if you saw this last week's city council meeting, but with Social Security coming up for this coming year, we're slated to get a 3.2 percentage increase. However, they have gone through and approved a 6% increase in both water and sewage. And also that's for next year as well. Then they also approved a 20% increase for our waste disposal. And the waste management is taking over agri-service as well. So we are in for a problem for our seniors. So I wanted to make sure that you knew that there's going to be an impact onto our senior and senior communities. This is something that we need to all take in consideration, and if there's any way or form that it can help out the senior community, it would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other slips?
That concludes slips off agenda.
Great, thank you. All right, we'll go to consideration of approval of our minutes from our last meeting. Any discussion or motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve has been made by Commissioner Malik. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Balma. No request for discussion, so let's go vote.
I'll let the record show that the motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. All right, our first, I'm sorry, before we go there, we have nothing on our agenda tonight listed under consent calendar, and we have nothing listed under transportation items. So we will go to our public hearing items. We have 3 items tonight. Item 4 is consideration of a Muni Code amendment, Chapter 24, to amend the short-term rental regulations of the city. Disclosures, 2, I guess, for myself. I was on the ad hoc committee that established the short-term rental regulations going back to, I believe it was 2019, and read the staff report. I think that's all I have. Commissioner Dodds?
Read staff report.
Thank you. Commissioner Balma?
Read the staff report and also received on the dais an email.
Yes, that would be an addition for mine as well. Commissioner Anthony?
Staff report and the report was on the desk.
Thank you. And Commissioner Malik?
Staff report and the additional documents.
Thank you. Sergio, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Rosales and members of the Planning Commission. The request before you tonight is make a recommendation to City Council on a municipal code amendment to amend Chapter 24, specifically Section 24.6 on STR prohibitions. Briefly, in 2019, the city adopted regulations to, or provisions to regulate short-term rentals. Since that time, a host of short-term rental permits have been approved by the city. At its August 30th workshop, the City Council provided staff direction to bring forward an amendment to the municipal code to prohibit STRs outside of the coastal zone. Currently, there's approximately 1,112 STRs operating in the city. It should be noted that there's several categories of STRs. So there's hosted and unhosted are the primary categories, but there's also properties that are exempt from requiring a STR permit. However, all these units that are utilized for rentals of less 30 days or less are required to register with a transient occupancy tax certificate from the city. There's approximately 749 STRs located within the city's coastal zone and approximately 363 located outside of the city's coastal zone, approximately 50 in the currently being reviewed. The primary intent of tonight's action is to implement council direction to prohibit STRs outside of the coastal zone. So this would be any new existing STRs be allowed to operate under existing conditions as long as they keep their certificate and their STR permit current. There's a new subsection being added to section 24.6, and it reads short-term rentals located in any zoning district outside. It would prohibit any short-term rentals in any zoning district outside of the city's coastal zone. With that, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission adopt Resolution 2023 P29, recommending the City Council approve the proposed amendments to Chapter 24 of the Municipal Code. That concludes my staff report. I'll be available for any questions that the Commission may have.
Thank you, Sergio. Yeah, I had a few questions. If you could provide some context to what the STR did in relation to the types of additional funding that brought into the city and how some of that funding goes to code enforcement and how code enforcement is going. And then I had a follow-up question after that. But.
Sure. Let me mention one more thing that I failed to mention during my presentation. We did receive one piece of correspondence this morning from a member of the community that's been provided to the Planning Commission at the dais. The context of that correspondence was that the person called it a moratorium should apply citywide, not only outside of the coastal zone. I just wanted to put that on the record to make sure that everyone understands that correspondence was received. With respect to these STRs, yes, the city does collect transient occupancy tax. I don't have with me today the numbers, what that represents. We did do a quick calculation on what the transient occupancy tax collected in fiscal year 2022, 2023 for those STRs and short-term rentals outside of the coastal zone. It was approximately $163,000. I believe the question you had related to how that occupancy tax funds a position within the code enforcement division of the Development Services Department. There is one dedicated code enforcement officer who does all the STR site inspections, and that's done on a yearly basis, on a bi-yearly basis, I understand it.
Okay. Follow-up question to that. When the city adopted its STR regulations, I know this body requested to get once a year kind of report on how things were going, because this was new for the city at that time to kind of judge how the program was going. I don't recall having seen anything here in some time. Can you maybe give us a sense of when we could expect some update to kind of, judge kind of how things are going?
Certainly. So that topic came up in the correspondence we
That's why I'm
received
bringing
today.
it up. Thank you.
We couldn't find on the record that was a mandate to come back to the Planning Commission to analyze how the STR program is working. What was conveyed and what was required by the City Council at the time was to provide a quarterly update to the City Council on how the STR program is working. And eventually they amended that direction from a quarterly update to a biannual update. So twice a year we report to the City Council. And basically it just boils down to how many permits we have on file, how many are operating. So that's the crux of the reporting that's done to the City Council.
Yeah, I think the context of what we received on our diocese this evening was I'll call it a concern by community group that expressed, if there's code enforcement that goes along with the program, it's funded by the program, they are seeing code enforcement kind of actions or issues out there. And I think that's how we characterized it when we talked about it upon its adoption back in 2019 was we expected there were going to be, issues related to enforcement. So could we get that information on some sort of frequency? It sounds like what the council gets is just more sort of the metrics of the funding and how many applications. So I'll go back to that. If we could have you develop something very simple.
Certainly.
I would imagine the code enforcement comes with metrics sort of built in already that you can just pull the data from and maybe do a short report.
Certainly, we have the ability to do that. We can work with code enforcement to maybe report back on what the average yearly complaint has been since the program has been
Exactly.
implemented.
Right.
And those kinds of metrics for consideration by the planning commission.
That would be great. That would be my request. Any questions, commissioners? Commissioner Obama, go ahead.
Sergio, I just had a question, I know you said this, I think, but I didn't understand it quite. You said all of the existing short-term rentals that are outside of the coastal zone would still be allowed to continue, right, as long as they follow the regulations? And also, what about the 49 that are in the pipeline? Are those also going to be able to be allowed outside the coastal zone?
Commissioner Obama, the current action would be to prohibit any future new applications from the effective date of the ordinance. So there's still a couple hurdles to pass or a couple milestones to reach before the ordinance would become effective. Those 49 units, presumably if they qualify to be an STR and they pass all the inspections and get all the appropriate permits, or whether it's a STR permit and a TOT certificate or just a TOT certificate in the case of a hosted unit, those would be allowed to continue since they already have an application on file. The council hasn't provided direction on how to treat the existing ones moving forward.
Cool, thank you.
Can I follow up on that? Two questions. If there is an existing permit for an STR outside the coastal zone, does the new amendment also contemplate that because those are renewed on some frequency? How often is that?
The STR permits themselves are renewed on a yearly basis, and the TOT certificate is a non-renewable, so there's no renewal required for the TOT certificate.
So if they fail to apply for a renewal, if they're outside the zone, will they drop out? They won't be, so those 200 or however many there were, if they don't go through the process again to keep the outside the zone STR permit in place, those will drop off over time?
So I think the question is if they fail to apply in a timely manner and renew their existing permit and they allow it to lapse, would they be eligible for to reapply and get a permit again? The current code amendment doesn't address that specific nuance. We'd probably turn to the city attorney's office at that time in those instances to figure out how to best treat that issue. I'm fairly certain that the current way the Article 20 or Chapter 24 is written, that there's no provisions for what happens if you allow your permit to lapse. I don't think there's a grace period built in or anything. So presumably under the proposed ordinance, STR permit holder who allows their permit to lapse would not be eligible to renew that permit.
Okay, yeah, if you would carry through that question to council. The other question, just for the context of the audience and myself, how far in does the coastal zone go? Where does that line generally end?
So generally, Chair Rosales, the coastal boundary is approximately Freeman Street. Some instances it's the alley, in some instances it goes beyond. There are areas in the city where there's bodies of water like the San Luis Rey River, the Buena Vista Lagoon, where the coastal zone boundary goes more inland. And so really it's just how it's identified on the post certification LCP jurisdiction map that's posted on the city's website, certified by the Coastal Commission.
There is a map available, but generally speaking, maybe a mile on average, mile and a half on average.
I think it might be even a little bit less than a mile.
Less than a mile, if you look at Freeman.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
probably.
So call it a mile just for conversation's sake, yeah.
Mile sounds easy, an easy talking point.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, I'm hogging all the questions. Commissioner Dodds, go ahead.
So just for clarity, excuse me, we're looking at putting a cap on the number of STRs for non-coastal zones, correct?
Commissioner Dodd, it's not a cap, so there's no physical number. It's just that moving forward, once the effective date of the ordinance, there will be no new STR permits or tax TOT certificates to be had outside of the coastal zone. So
Are there going to be any limitations within the coastal zone?
that direction hasn't been provided by the city council at this time.
Because,
I have another question, I guess.
go ahead.
Let me go to Commissioner Malik real quick, and then I'll come back to you, Louise. Jay, go ahead.
Thank you. Sergio, are the STRs transferable upon transfer of ownership?
To my knowledge, they are not transferable. A new owner of a property that currently operates as an STR would have to apply for their own permit.
Okay, thank you.
So it doesn't run with the land?
No, it's not like an entitlement like CUP is.
Yeah. Good question. Commissioner Baum, go ahead.
I was just thinking about going in the future, like Southmore Hills and our agritourism area that we're trying to promote. In the future, short-term rentals might be something that might be looked upon as a favorable thing in that area. So how hard would it be to add this back into an area, like say area by area, we look at this, is this going to take a huge process, or is that something, I know that it might even already be in the Southmore Hills Community Plan, that language might already be in there. I'm not sure yet, but what do you think about that?
So ag tourism, Commissioner Balma, so ag tourism uses such as a bed and breakfast or perhaps a small boutique hotel wouldn't be precluded by this action. It would be literally just single-family homes out in Southmore Hills. They don't currently have an STR permit, then they would be precluded from having one in the future.
Because like they could build an ADU or something or whatever on their property and then use that for like, someone coming out to do wine tasting and.
An ADU inherently is deed restricted to
That's
be
right.
utilized as a short-term rental.
That's right, you're correct on that. Okay, so we'd have to revisit that if we decided that we thought this was something that would be good for the agritourism kind of idea out there.
That would be direction from city. This is a city council-driven request, so it would be presumably that direction would have to come
Okay.
from city council.
So it's not a closed door forever, it's kind of just city council.
Seemingly, there's nothing as a closed door.
Okay, thank you.
And I think we said that when the city adopted this, as we tackled the issue that, because the city had never had this before, that this was going to be kind of a tryout thing for many years to see how things were going. So this is a step in a particular direction. It could be that there's a step later on that includes a revisit of the, STRs in Laurel Hills. So, Commissioner Dodds, go ahead.
Do we have a ratio of STRs to long-term rentals and homeowners?
Not in those specific metrics. I can tell you, Commissioner Dodds, as an example, there are approximately 1,112 STRs citywide or property used for short-term rentals purposes citywide. And the city has approximately 66,000 housing units. So it's a small percentage of units that are devoted to short-term rentals in the city. Of those 1,112, a good portion of them are hosted. So they still serve as a primary residence for the people who own the property. That's one of the requirements when you are permit exempt. You have a hosted unit, what the term is, that's someone's primary residence. It's not an investment property. So there's a good portion of the 1,112 that are hosted units. So the unhosted units, what one would consider perhaps maybe an institutional investor who owns a number of them, are fairly limited with respect to the overall unit count within the city, which again is over 66,000 housing units in the city.
Yeah, I guess my concern is that if we're not looking at coastal, how large are we going to allow this to grow? And if we're going to allow property perch buyers to just come in and just buy properties and just use those just strictly for STRs.
Yeah, and that, Commissioner Dodds, I think that's the primary concern of the city council, and that's why they provided that direction, but they did not include the coastal zone with the direction they provided staff. That's certainly something, if it's the planning commission's desire, that they can make a recommendation that we can report to to the city council on, if it's so the desire of the planning.
Thank you.
Commissioner Malik, go ahead.
Was there any consideration to continue to allow hosted STRs outside of the coastal zone? Seems to be a bit of a different dynamic. I understand the challenges with properties that are primarily a commercial investment, if you will, but the shorter term rental for a hosted unit is kind of in a different category. So was there any consideration to continue to allow that?
So Commissioner Malik, those are some of the recommendations that staff formulated about an absence of council direction on those recommendations. We didn't feel comfortable bringing it forward at this time. So that's something perhaps that the city council could provide some direction on moving forward.
So then would that be something that would be considered to push back to the council to say, consider that prior to us voting or?
Yeah, we can, I mean, what's before us
Just
is
trying to make sure that
pretty
we have the level
straightforward,
of
but if-
dialogue.
Yeah, if we wanted to add a nuance or something additional, it would go to council and they deliberate whether or not they want to include that or not.
And certainly, again, similar to Commissioner Dodd's expressed concerns, those are some recommendations. If it's the pleasure of the Planning Commission, we certainly could forward those to City Council as part of our report to them on what happened here tonight.
Right.
I think that also speaks to Commissioner Balma's concern where you may have an opportunity to not have to redo an ordinance to enable that.
Yeah. Okay. This is a public hearing, so I think we're still doing public input. I don't see that on the agenda, though. City Attorney, we're still, well, it is a public hearing, so I guess our process still is going to have the public weigh in. Sorry for that stumble on my part. Any slips to speak on this item? Thank you, Sergio, for the presentation.
Chair Rosales, yes, we have 5
Great.
slips. If you'll come forward, you have 3 minutes to speak and follow the order on the screen and give us your name and state it clearly. Thank you.
Hi, Colleen.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name's Colleen Balch. I'm from South Oceanside, and I'm a former planning commissioner. And I was also on the ad hoc committee with Chair Rosales back in 2019. And the first thing I would like to encourage is that you do adopt this recommendation this evening. I think it's high time. We've had this with the problems that have been in South Oceanside that we've had. I'll just leave it at that because it goes too far into depth. Second thing, though, I want to caution you on or let you know that it probably will happen is that amending this item will cause many issues within the coastal zone. One thing is that we can do to help the coastal zone is stop allowing them to have 8, 9, 10-bedroom homes. When we originally thought about this ordinance, I don't know that any of us thought that that could happen. But we're seeing 3 and 4-bedroom homes morph into 8, 9, 10 bedrooms. And then if they're a code enforcement issue, code enforcement goes in there, gets them approved, and then they go on doing their business with a 10-bedroom home. Not appropriate. It'll also affect the parking down there. It's already affecting parking for locals. We don't have any place to park to go to our own beach, even though it is rocks right now. But that's just something to keep in mind is when we move everything to the coastal zone, you are basically cutting the beach off from anybody local and anybody that's here not staying in the coastal zone. The other one is a 3 strikes rule. Originally, we did have a rule in there that if they violated their terms of operation, after the 3rd one, they could have their license pulled. That's not happening. Code enforcement is absolutely worthless when it comes to enforcing the rules of these. They just don't do it. I have firsthand knowledge. I have firsthand been a complainant, and I actually had to go to a council member to try and get the answer, and they never even answered him. So we need to fix that problem big time. But I'd also like to say that I still think that there's a way to have short-term rentals if they're going to be regulated properly. And as I said, they're not right now. So with that, I'm going to say goodnight and wish you all a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Colleen. Whitney, come on forward.
Evening, Commissioners. Thanks for the opportunity to comment. My name is Whitney. My family has lived in Oceanside coastal community for over 50 years. And while the effort to create more housing in Oceanside is a noble pursuit, I fear this resolution as written, by focusing only on the non-coastal zone, will unfortunately amplify the major issues that STRs currently pose in the residential coastal zone. To be frank, we have a major code enforcement crisis when it comes to STRs in coastal residential neighborhoods. Commercial entities have and are buying up houses, bootlegging extra bedrooms, and operating high-capacity vacation rental businesses that have an immediate and detrimental impact on the long-term renters, the homeowners, and the visitors of the coastal residential neighborhoods. In lieu of hasty text amendments, the City of Oceanside should first conduct a comprehensive STR ordinance review that would limit occupancy, hold STR units accountable for excessive noise disturbance, parking infractions, trespassing, and other safety concerns in all of Oceanside residential neighborhoods, regardless of coastal or non-coastal zoning. And then maybe you can get to the limitations and the further restrictions. But I think I second Colleen's notes that we need to really consider what's going to happen in the coastal zone first before you push all of that business and it gets amplified. So thanks for your time.
Thank you. Come on.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ty Kaler, 1637 South Pacific Street. It's good to see some familiar faces from the ad hoc committee process for the short-term rental ordinance, and I welcome new faces. So we've gone through this issue for years in the coastal zone, and I'm in South Pacific Street, and there's just a large grouping of these STRs that are causing problems. But specific to what's before the Planning Commission today, I don't understand how the purpose of this is to increase housing stock when we have about 200,000 residents, roughly 66,000 housing units, and only 300 STRs inland. And most of the STRs are in the coastal zone. So I'm not sure what we're accomplishing by this. And as Commissioner Balma said, can we revisit this and so forth? Why not revisit the whole short-term rental ordinance right now and do a comprehensive ordinance across the coastal zone where most of the STRs are, and perhaps revisit what the Planning Commission originally voted 4-1 for, primary residence hosted units throughout the City of Oceanside, and that was completely abandoned for the corporate entity and corporate interests. What the Planning Commission originally gave to the City Council was pretty good, especially with the hosted angle of it. And there's many LCPs, such as Santa Monica, who have done a great job in limiting the party house activity. So I just want to bring up that point that there is a way to possibly, without prohibiting future STRs in the inland zone, that perhaps there's another way where through primary hosted and so forth and other restrictions, limiting the number of people and so forth. But the real problem that the short-term rental ordinance does not address is the party house activity in the coastal zone. And that's what we really have to focus on. For instance, and it's less than 5% of all the short-term rentals have 5 or more bedrooms. And they all happen to be next door to me. So, and my neighbor just converted their garage, to a number 9 bedroom in the little loft. And his name is David Fishbach. And for those of you who don't know, he has hundreds of short-term rentals. And this is getting crazy because there's no enforcement and it's very, very difficult. But we can solve this. This can be solved with some enforcement, some oversight, and so forth. So I look forward to improving this. And remember, there's only about 29 actual properties that have 5 or more bedrooms. If we just reduce the impact, and so we can thrive in our communities and so forth. So thank you for considering this. I've never seen a short-term rental I liked, but I'm not totally against them. But I don't think prohibition is probably the way forward. So because it doesn't do anything. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt, followed by Joel West. Good evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Dan Schmidt. I'll keep it short. I foresee the negative impact of the negative impacts to the community outweighing the potential and only assumed benefits to increasing the housing supply. Stifling the inland STR market will only exacerbate the existing coastal STR community issues of overoccupation of units, unauthorized events, noise, and parking issues, many of which have been named already tonight. I believe the city should start by enforcing their existing STR regulations, assessing the existing code, enforcing their existing city codes before attempting to effect new change. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioners, my name is Joel West, representing Safe South O, and as with Commissioner Balma, Rosales, Colleen was here in this room in April 2019 when the Planning Commission passed a very good ordinance, recommended a very good ordinance, and the council passed a watered-down ordinance a couple months later. First, I am pleased with this change. It's a step in the right direction, a small step, but we'll take it to preserve the character of the South Oak community east of Coast Highway. Commissioner Rosales, your memory is exactly right. Both this commission and at least one or two council members, their intent of that report was to get reports on complaints. Because for enforcement purposes, how do you know whether the ordinance is working unless you have detail on what sort of complaints they are and how prevalent they were? And so there was definitely a sense in this dais of the Planning Commission and at least of the council members, even if it was not in the motion, that there would be a quarterly, now semi-annual report on what are the complaints, what sort of problems are there. Because obviously if it's, say, parking, maybe you tighten up the parking restrictions. If it's noise, maybe you tighten up the noise reporting or noise sanctions or things like that. And so I think the commission has an opportunity here to make a dramatic improvement here by just having this report, which the residents were trying throughout 20, 21, and 22 to get a copy of this report, and were not unable to do so. We tried every channel we could and got nowhere. Just a quick point to Commissioner Dodds. Yeah, you're right. There is no limit in the coastal zone, and as Ty said, one of the biggest issue are these five-plus bedroom units because they're underparked. There's nothing in the city's current ordinances that requires you to have adequate parking for a 10-bedroom house, which will be attracting a minimum of 5 cars, and you have a two-car garage, and those other 3 cars go on the street. And I've gone to the Coastal Commission meeting and tried to bring this to their attention. They're not really interested in hearing it. So one way to do it would be to require more serious parking for STRs that have more than 3 or 4 bedrooms, which would then ameliorate the impact they're having on tourist-serving businesses and tourist-serving public recreation uses by making them have adequate parking for their usages. And finally, I think that both Commissioner Anthony and Commissioner Rosales got in the issue of clarity on this transition between the people who are currently licensed inland but would not be licensed to renew if they didn't maintain their license. And I would also argue if they changed ownership. In Prop 13, you lose your assessment when you change ownership. So if you change ownership on your STR, why should you be allowed to be grandfathered in at that point? So anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. West. Is that?
That concludes our slips, Chair Rosales.
Great, thank you. If you did not submit a slip, would you like to address the commission on this item? You can come forward before I close the public hearing. Okay, don't see anybody coming forward, so we'll close the public hearing and we'll bring it back here for discussion. Looks like Commissioner Malik, you're ready to go here. I made some notes, so I think the desire is to add some additional content to what's in front of us. So I'll start with you, Commissioner Malik, and if we miss something, we'll make sure we pick it up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think given the impact on local residents
Go on, there you go.
Given the impacts on the residents in the coastal zone and the issues that were brought forward to the commission today, I think this entire ordinance needs to be revisited and revised to ensure that the entire city is covered, not this. And I think squeezing the balloon by not allowing any other short-term rentals on the outside of the coastal zone will squeeze that balloon and push that toward the coastal zone. And I think it's in our best interest as a city to ensure that we look at the entire issue and maybe better define it, whether that's a rewriting of the ordinance or what it may be. It needs to be taken care of, and I think it needs to be turned fairly quickly so that we can, and that means probably within 6 months is what I would recommend, that something is brought back forward to have a revised ordinance. Whether that's for us to determine or for the city council, I'm not sure, but in my opinion, I think this matter requires additional revision to ensure that the public interest is and public safety are represented properly.
Okay, so your desire is to see essentially a complete review, a more robust revision, obviously taking in some of what we've heard tonight, but clearly a thorough review as opposed to just a limited.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to get some input from some others, and we'll see where this takes us. Go ahead, Commissioner Obama.
I agree with Commissioner Malik's assessment on that as far as the pushback and actually revisit it again. And we also heard some strong points from our audience, like the 3-strike rule. I like that. I don't know why that's not there, because we need to have some kind of like meat in this thing. The code enforcement officers, if there's 2 or 1, seems like they're not really doing their job. So I'm not sure if there is a better school of code enforcement people that we need to send them to. And the reports on the progress of what's been going on is another good thing. So I think that there's a lot of stuff we need to add into this that I wouldn't feel comfortable approving it as is right now, that I think we need a little bit more, meat in this thing, a little bit more, something that to push back on some of these violations. And if it's, I think the 3-strike thing sounds good. I'm not sure why that was taken out. You were part of that. Why, do you remember why that was taken out?
Well, to paraphrase what one of our speakers said, I think we brought forward a pretty robust STR regulation or policy to the council, and they took a look at it and they made some modifications. So that must have been one of them. Commissioner Dodds, go ahead.
I also agree with Commissioner Bollock. I believe that we need to have a little bit more focus on coastal as far as how we're regulating the growth in the coastal zone, as well as looking at consistent reports back on violations. You mentioned metrics. Would like to see what the metrics are as far as the types of violations, where those violations are concentrated as far as in areas, and who, or if there are particular owners who are consistent bad actors.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Malik.
Yeah, I guess just to finalize some thoughts, that it sounds like the 2019 had a pretty, working group had a pretty good framework for this. The other part of that is I think that we should give serious consideration to hosted STRs specifically and find a way to ensure that that gets introduced as a standard for this so that we avoid the commercialization of residential properties.
Okay. Well, what I'd like to do, or what I'd like to offer somebody to do, is make a motion. Sounds like we're kind of all on the same page, but make a motion that has some specificity to it, so some detail, bullet points, if you will, on those different items we touched on, so that gives staff some really good direction. And I'm about to go to Shannon, but that's kind of what I'd like to do, because Shannon was key to the what we constructed back in 2019. She was at all the meetings, and so I'll stop there, and Shannon.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Rosales, Planning Commissioners. I did just want to point out that the three-strike prohibition is still in the ordinance.
Okay.
It's under section 24.8 of chapter 24 of the municipal code. And it reads that any person who violates the provisions of this chapter shall be deemed guilty of a misdemeanor punishable by a fine not exceeding $1,000, imprisonment for a term not to exceed 6 months, and it continues on. And there is language that if there's, it's up to the city attorney and the city manager's office to revoke a permit if there's continued violations. So that did make it into the ordinance.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure that was clear, because I think there was some comments that it was removed from the ordinance, which is not true.
Okay. So,
It's the code enforcement, I think, is what the problem is, right? The people that are actually trying to go out there and assess this, they're not quite, you know, they're not strong enough. They're not pushing hard enough. They're not trying to, they're going along with it possibly. They're like, you know what I mean? It sounds like it from what we heard tonight.
Yeah, Commissioner Balma, Commissioners, I can't speak on behalf of code enforcement. I know we have hired a full-time short-term rental code enforcement officer, and he's definitely very busy. In the first few reports that were provided to council, we did provide a summary of all the complaints and things like that did kind of stop happening, I believe, during COVID and some staffing shortages. So I'm sure that's something that we can bring back again if that's of interest to the Planning Commission, in addition to the number of short-term rental permits.
definitely not only Planning Commission, but I would think council. Well, Sergio, you were at the workshop with council when this was discussed, and this modification that we're in front of us tonight was brought, put together, and that's what we're talking about here. If we do this sort of pushback or, incorporate these other ideas, is that going to, I'll say, go anywhere? Or, because what we're asking to do here is pretty robust versus what we're seeing in front of us tonight, so.
Certainly, Chair Rosales. So tonight, the Planning Commission is asked to make a recommendation on the municipal code amendment in front of you. Nothing precludes the Planning Commission from adding on recommendations to that. That was similar to what occurred when the STR ordinance was considered by this body for recommendation in 2019. There's a few recommendations that didn't make it into the ordinance. So all we can do is you make a motion on the ordinance in front of you. If it's the desire of the Planning Commission to add on additional features to that, that's completely to your discretion. All we can do is report on what the recommendation was. Ultimately, the City Council is going to make a decision on this item.
Okay, that's fair. All right, anybody like to make a motion and include those items that we discussed? Looks like Commissioner Malik is jotting those down. Okay, so I'll stall a little bit.
I don't know if I would go so far as to say the commercial part of it. I know a couple of the people that do that for a living. They do provide millions of dollars a year in TOT tax that the city uses for a lot of things. So I know that some of those people don't live in those houses. They have a business that does that, but they do provide a lot of TOT tax to help the city's general fund. So there's kind of got to be a little bit of push there. I mean, I'm not sure I'd go that far and say no, unless you live in your house, you can't, do short-term rentals. I wouldn't think that would be something the council would go with anyway. So I'm just throwing that out as I don't know if we'd go that far. It's nice, but it won't work.
All right, Commissioner Malik, you ready to tee up a motion?
I guess I would recommend that we move to vote on the consideration of a municipal code amendment, amending Chapter 24, as written, with the additional recommendation that we propose a further revision of Chapter 24 of the municipal code in order to cover the entire city, including the coastal zone, with the intent to enhance and strengthen enforcement and to ensure that the short-term rentals are in the best interest of the residents of the city and the city in general.
Sounds good.
Did that capture, Commissioner Dodds, I know you had an idea. Was that captured in the motion? Do you want to ask the motion maker to add anything?
Wanted to add if we could have regular report backs from a metric standpoint on compliance.
Okay, that's consistent with what I said too. So motion maker?
Yes, concur. should include reporting back to I believe both the Planning Commission as well as the City Council. I think sometimes we tend to, two ships passing in the night and making sure that we all have the same information so that if we see something that is a concern, we can act on it. And it goes up and down, both from the council and to the council.
Very good. Okay, we have a motion to adopt what's in front of us, the amended Chapter 24 with some additions. City planner, before I ask for a vote, clear in terms of what those are as they were articulated?
Just want to thank you for allowing the opportunity to clarify that. So if I understood the motion correctly, it would be to recommend the amended Chapter 24 as proposed, with the addition to come back and revisit Article 24 as a whole and to include the coastal zone. I don't believe the motion included so that would be a future endeavor, not necessarily something that's going to be taken forward to the City Council at this time to include the coastal zone. That's something to come back and reanalyze and restudy. Is that accurate, Commissioner Malik?
Well, I mean, no, not necessarily. To me, that sounds like we're kicking the can down the road. So I don't think that really fits the bill. We're just we're admiring the problem. And I don't think it's in our best interest or the city's best interest to admire the problem. I believe that we need to address the issue. And if that means that we vote the current amendment down with the caveat to further study, then maybe that's a better way to articulate what I said.
Yeah, if the intent is that this proposed amendment isn't substantive enough to address all the concerns we heard tonight as an example, then the recommendation should be to just not implement the proposed amendment as written, and then provide an amendment that you would feel more comfortable with. Obviously, that would require a host of more work, and we probably wouldn't take that forward to the or to the City Council without coming back to this body. So then what we would report to the City Council is that the Planning Commission did not recommend approval of staff's amendment as proposed.
And it sounds like, Commissioner Malik, you wouldn't be interested at this point in a two-step process, one that tackles this now and then the coastal zone as a sort of subsequent process.
I don't think that fully addresses the challenge that is there. I commend the efforts of the planning staff to put this together, but there are certainly some things, as we've heard from the public tonight, and that we've discussed amongst ourselves, that I think that warrant the City Council understanding that, no, this doesn't go far enough. We need to fully revisit it, and it needs to become maybe more of a priority for us to do so.
Okay. Then if I understand the city planner correctly, then if I could perhaps have you modify your motion as it stands, which essentially would be a rejection of what's in front of us and an ask that they include these other items and do a more robust analysis. Is that?
That's correct. Yeah, okay. That's right.
So I think I got it right. So there's a motion made by Commissioner Malik to not approve the amended code, Chapter 24, and instead send it back to the Planning Department and City Council with the modifications expressed in the motion, which include information about enforcement, an analysis that includes all of the city, not just the inland and the coastal zone, and I'm missing a third one. I just want to make sure we get our motion correct.
Yeah, reporting.
Reporting, okay.
Reporting on enforcement, violations in enforcement.
Yeah, I think okay.
Yeah.
City planner, did we capture that in the motion accurately at this point?
I believe we have. So if I understood correctly, the motion would be to not recommend approval of the simple amendment that staff has brought forward today, and to take forward a recommendation to the City Council to wholly analyze all of Chapter 24 to account for enforcement issues or enforcement abilities and metrics to include the coastal zone and to ensure that regular reporting is done to both the Planning Commission and City Council on the enforcement metrics that we've described, complaints about noise, complaints about not enough parking, those types of things.
Correct.
Yeah, I think the home modifications too, where you had, homes that were designed as a 3 to 4 bedroom that are now 10 bedrooms, something that we should look at with that as well as a point to take on.
Okay, we have a motion. I think we've pretty well articulated what that motion is. I'll entertain a second on that motion.
I'll second.
Commissioner Dodds has offered a second on that motion, so let's go ahead and vote.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes, right?
Yes.
Oh, wait.
I'm not going to say how to vote.
Yeah, you said a yes vote is a no vote.
I saw you did when I go, no, I don't think that was right.
That the Planning Commission's motion passes unanimously.
Yeah.
Yeah, those ones are tricky sometimes. Okay. We'll go to our next item, which is agenda item number 5, consideration of a regular coastal permit to allow for the demolition of an existing home located at 116 Eaton Street and then construct a new home on the same location. The applicant is Robert and Emily Steele. Disclosures, I drove by the site today, actually, and have the staff report in front of me. Commissioner Dodds, disclosures?
Read the staff report and driven by the site.
Thank you. Commissioner Bama?
I also did the same.
Commissioner Malik?
The same. I live in the neighborhood, so I'm very familiar with the area. Thank you.
Great. And Commissioner Anthony?
Just a staff report.
Great, thank you. Who's handling our, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. I am Natalie Vasquez with the Planning Division, and I am here tonight to discuss agenda item number 5 for regular coastal permit RC 23-0005. The applicant is requesting a regular coastal permit for the demolition of an existing single-family residence and construction of a new single-family residence at 116 Eaton Street. The project site is located at the corner of South Myers and Eaton Street, adjacent to the St. Malo residential community in the South Oceanside planning area, and is within the appealable jurisdiction of the local coastal program. The property is designated single-family residential, the property is designated single-family detached residential by the city's general plan and low-density residential by the city's local coastal program land use plan. Per the city zoning ordinance, the property is zoned R1 single-family residential. The site is bordered by the coastal rail line to the east and single-family residential to the north, south, and west. The proposed project consists of the demolition of an existing 1,915 square foot single-family residence and construction of a 2-story, 5-bedroom, 5.5 bathroom single-family residence on a .20 acre site with 4,076 square feet of living area, a 374 square foot rooftop deck, and a 900 square foot 3-car garage. The architectural design matches the French Normandy-themed architecture of the St. Malo community and consists of white stucco walls with accent materials of brick and wood beams and multi-pane windows throughout the residence. In terms of zoning ordinance compliance, the project complies with the applicable development standards for the R1 district. As detailed in the staff report, staff has evaluated the project and finds it's consistent with the local coastal program, general plan, and zoning ordinance. There will be no impact to the public coastal access or parking. The project's proposed density is consistent with the surrounding single-family detached residential land uses, and the proposed architecture is consistent with the surrounding neighborhood and has been approved by the St. Malo Beach Architecture Committee. As noted in the previous slide, the project also complies with the development standards of the R1 zone. Therefore, staff recommends that the Planning Commission confirm issuance of a Class 3 categorical exemption per the California Environmental Quality Act, Article 19, Section 15303A, new construction or conversion of small structures, and approve regular coastal permit RC 23-00005 by adopting Planning Commission Resolution Number 2023-P27 with findings and conditions of approval attached herein. This concludes my presentation. The applicant, Robert Steele, and myself will be available to answer any questions that the commission may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Vasquez? No? Thank you.
Thank you. And the applicant would like to say a few words.
Mr. Steele, I don't know if you have a presentation or you just want to be available for any questions?
I'm just available. I've never built a home before, but we don't plan on renting it, and we just plan on living in it until we're gone.
How about our last conversation about short-term rentals? Not something you're going to entertain?
No, I've never done that, and just in case anybody cares, St. Malo has their own rules about
Yeah.
kind of get.
Thank you. I would like to make a comment about your application. There's a nice little write-up here about how you plan on reusing some of the lumber from the existing home and how you're going to make it very energy efficient and so forth. So kudos to you for doing that and finding an architect that's able to do that. So thank you. It is a public hearing. Do we have any slips to speak on this item? Thank you, Mr. Steele.
Chair Rosales, yes, we have one slip. So if we could have Clark Wardle come forward, you'll have 3 minutes to speak, and please, oh, we have your name for the record. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm here to speak in favor of this project. My name's Clark Wardle, and I own the parcel at the home site at 2027 South Myers Street. So you've seen the drawings and the plans show that the Steele's address is Eaton Street. They have only 50 feet of frontage on Eaton Street and 120 feet of frontage on South Myers Street. So actually, this residence is going to be more impactful on South Myers Street and to the people coming down that direction than when you turn the corner onto Eaton Street. And the Steeles and I share a common property line on South Myers Street. So I've owned that home site since 2014. I can tell you that the Steeles have been better stewards of the property and better stewards of the community than the two prior owners. I have seen their plans and reviewed them and looked at them, and you've heard from staff that the plans appear to be consistent with the zoning ordinances and the local coastal program. I've looked at the architecture. It's lovely architecture. It will be a benefit to the community, the immediate neighborhood, and also to the community of Oceanside. So I would encourage you to support this project and vote in favor of it. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wardle. Okay. Any other slip? No other slips?
That concludes our slips, Chair Rosales.
Great, thank you. If anybody else would like to come forward before I close it, Mr. Clark, go ahead. Or
Hi,
Mr.
my name
West,
is
I'm
Joel
sorry.
West, 1730 South Pacific Street. When we live about 3 blocks north, and when we bought our lot in 2000, we thought we were moving into a residential neighborhood because during the 50s and the 60s, a lot of people lived in these neighborhoods in the single-family ranch houses. And with the STRs, the neighborhood has been converted to a lot of vacation homes and obviously STRs and so on. So we really, speaking on behalf of those of us who live full-time in the neighborhood, it's good to see somebody actually saying this is a wonderful place to have a single-family home. Why wouldn't I want to do it? But also as somebody who built his own house, complied with every regulation, had lots of inspections, waited a long time, blah, 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 blah. It's very good to see somebody who's not trying to game the system and actually willing to live within the city's codes and city's restrictions. And so when I saw the plans, I said, yeah, that's a beautiful house. And it's exactly what the law allows, and more power to them. And so in any event, I wish we had more people applying in our neighborhood for things that were in compliance with the tone and the intention of the neighborhood, and not trying to bend or break the rules as best they can. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. West. Commissioner Dodds, go ahead.
I'm not an architect, but I wanted to thank you for this design. This looks awesome. And I wish you could give a master class to some of these developers who come into neighborhoods and develop things that don't fit. But thank you.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Bring it back to commissioners for consideration. Commissioner Ballmer?
If there are no other discussion from our dais, then I too must say that you did a great job on this submittal. The house is gorgeous. You're welcome to Oceanside if you haven't already been here, but this is exactly who we hope does things like this. So I would be glad to recommend that we confirm issuance of Class 3 category exemption for new construction, and there's so many numbers here, pursuant to section number 15303A of the California Environmental Quality CEQA Act, and approved regular coastal permit number RC 23-00005 by adopting Planning Commission Resolution number 2023 P27 with the findings and conditions herein.
Thank you. We have a motion for approval. Second, anybody?
Second.
I have multiple seconds. I'll go with Commissioner Malik because you're closest to me on my left. So we have a motion and a second for approval. Let's vote.
Let the record show that the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Good luck, Mr. Steele. We like your project. Okay, our last public hearing item is item 6, which is consideration of a development plan and which includes a phased restoration of wetland and upland habitats located at what's known as the Loma Alta, is it SLU? SLU Wetlands Enhancement Project. The only disclosure I have is I've been in that area many times, and I read the staff report. Commissioner Dodds, disclosures?
Read the staff report and very familiar with the area.
Thank you. Commissioner Ballmer?
I also am very familiar with the site and read the staff report.
Commissioner Malik?
Read the staff report, familiar with the site.
Thank you. And Commissioner Anthony?
Staff report and very familiar with the site.
Good evening again. Shannon?
Good evening, Chair Rosales, Planning Commissioners. Shannon Vitale, Senior Planner in the Development Services Department. I'm here tonight to discuss agenda item number 6, the Loma Alta Slough Wetlands Restoration Project. The Loma Alta Slough is a coastal wetland located at the mouth of the Loma Alta Creek in southern Oceanside. The slough provides nesting and foraging habitats for marsh and shoreline birds. Due to urbanization adjacent to the slough, water quality issues and degraded habitat have been ongoing since the 1960s. The city began acquiring properties adjacent to the slough in the 1990s in anticipation of this project. The city has since received grant funding from multiple state and federal agencies to improve conditions in the slough. In 2019, a technical advisory committee comprised of members from different environmental regulatory agencies was formed to assist in the environmental review and design of the project. In 2022, the City Council adopted the CEQA document for the project, and in 2023, the California Coastal Commission approved the coastal development permit for the project, since a majority of the project is within the Coastal Commission's jurisdiction. The project site, which is outlined in red on this slide, encompasses approximately 5.8 acres and includes 6 city-owned parcels with varying land use and zoning designations, including open space. Surrounding land uses include the La Salina Wastewater Treatment Facility to the northwest, Buccaneer Beach to the west, Buccaneer Park to the south, industrial uses to the north, and an RV park to the east and south. Since a portion of the project site is designated as open space, the project requires a development plan to be reviewed by the Planning Commission. The development plan is for the restoration of existing marsh habitat and public improvements at the site, which include a 6-foot wide public access trail located on the north side of the slough and a viewing platform. The trail, which would be made from decomposed granite, would be accessible off of Coast Highway and continue west under the railroad bridge to connect to the future coastal rail trail, which is currently under project review. Additionally, educational signage would be installed along the new trail to provide information on the wetland habitats, native animals found in the slough, and the Loma Alta watershed. These efforts are expected to improve ecological, recreational, and aesthetic qualities of the slough. This slide here shows the overall footprint of the project. As described in the staff report, staff reviewed the project for compliance with the general plan and the zoning ordinance. The project is consistent with the goals and policies of the land use element, the energy and climate action element, and the zoning ordinance. The project components will ensure that habitat area would be preserved and enhanced and would provide additional recreational opportunities for the public. In accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act, a mitigated negative declaration was prepared for the project. It was circulated for a 30-day public review back in 2021. The City Council adopted this document last year on September 14th. Extensive public outreach occurred during the design and environmental review phase of the project. There were 3 community workshops to gather public input and feedback on the preliminary designs. Additionally, the project complied with the city's enhanced notification program. There were 2 notice of application signs placed on the project site, as shown on the slide here, and there was a mailed out notice to all property owners within a 1,500-foot radius and tenants within a 100-foot radius. To date, staff has received no comments on the project. Staff therefore finds the project consistent with the general plan and zoning ordinance and recommends the Planning Commission adopt Planning Commission Resolution number 2023-P26, approving the development plan. That concludes my presentation. We also have the project manager, Justin Gamble, here. Should you have any questions for us?
I have a couple of questions, Shannon. In the first paragraph of the staff report, it indicates that Loma Alta Creek and the slough is an impaired water body. With these improvements, is there a guarantee that it'll be removed from the impaired water body list, or is it just the hope?
Chair Rosales, I'm going to turn that over to our environmental officer, Justin.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Rosales and fellow commissioners. My name is Justin Gamble, city staff and the environmental officer. I'm with the Water Utilities Department. After 12 years with the city, I think this is actually my first time in front of the Planning Commission, so it's a pleasure to meet you all. So specific to your question, as part of the initial design phase, our consultant, Environmental Science Associates, they did conduct a water quality technical report. And as part of that, what they did is they looked at literature values for other marsh restoration projects on the West Coast. And in the scientific literature, they looked at nutrient uptake rates. So the impairment at Loma Alta Slough is primarily for nutrients. There's been a history in the dry season of having algae growth. They call that eutrophication. So they looked at other restoration projects and they took carbon and nutrient uptake values from those projects on a per acre basis and applied it to Loma Alta. So again, it was modeled and it was a best professional judgment estimate indicating that there would be nutrient uptake and hopefully some improvements to water quality.
Great. That's what I would hope you were going to say. Thank you. Shannon, if you go back to some slides that include the treatment facility, yeah, that one's perfect. My understanding is Las Salinas will be sunsetting at some point and everything will be directed to the wastewater facility in the valley. Is that an opportunity, given that that's city property, to actually expand on the slough here?
So Chairman Rosales, Planning Commissioners, there are a variety of projects in this area. The next project under review is the construction of the new Buccaneer lift station. And then once that goes through the process, then they're going to evaluate the decommissioning of Las Salinas and potentials for that entire site. So we haven't seen an application yet for that area, but perhaps. I don't know if you have any other information on that.
I believe the future of that property would be at the discretion of the city council.
Yeah. I mean, it could be all sorts of things, I guess. Okay.
Yeah, I can speak to the coastal rail trail. That's a project that's under review now, and that would be, this trail would actually connect to the future coastal rail trail, which will be providing a south connection through Carlsbad, so it'll be people can access from this trail under the railroad bridge to the coastal rail trail when that's built. That'll be a nice amenity for the public.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Malik, go ahead.
Question on the pathway that's the footpath that's on the south side of the slough. Will that be maintained? Because that's the access to Buccaneer Park from Coast Highway. So just
Commissioner Mallett, Commissioners, you're referring to the Loma Alta footpath on the south side?
yes.
I believe that there's no plan to not maintain that, so.
Looks like it's within the zone. I was just curious, will that be improved at all or anything done with that?
So we're proposing habitat improvements, so basically right along the shoreline to that footpath, but we're not proposing, demolishing and replacing that. That alignment will remain, but there will be habitat improvements directly adjacent to it.
Okay, thanks. That's all I have.
Okay, I think we're done at the moment for commissioner questions, so we'll go to the public. Any slips to speak?
Yes, Chair Rosales, we have 2 slips this evening. So we've got Jimmy Knott and Joel West.
Great, thank you.
Chair, Commissioners, Jimmy Knott, 127 Sherry Lane. And if you looked at the map, I'm just a little bit to the east of this, and my community as well. Have a few little tidbits of information and also questions that are involved. Number one, the impairment, we can go back in a little bit of history here, goes back to Mayor Richardson, 1950s. When he heard about the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers designating contributing sites of natural water flow, he basically blocked off this estuary site. And what happened was that he called it then a seasonal wash. And they accepted that as the excuse at the time. So we may want to go through and check the history on that and look into that. And he had the city's bulldozers go down and block off the channel. Number 2, is this going to be continued with the interlink with the rail trail? 3 was my concern about heavy rain and flooding impacts, especially with the planning and everything here. I've seen it washed out a lot of times. 4, what's going to be involved here is they're saying that it's going to be planted with willows. Depending upon what type of willows, they can off-cast, shall I say, some type of heavy down type things. And so I would say that the community in the area may be having some complaints. So I wanted to alert you to that. And the boardwalk. It says onto the little summary onto your sheet, your public sheet that you have for the summary, that this is to be pedestrian only. However, if you look at some of the examples of the boardwalk, it has someone on a bicycle. So that needs to be cleared up. And the legend cites as well, because it says that 72 feet of boardwalk. I think it's longer than 72 feet. So that needs to be corrected as well. So I look forward to seeing this. We've gone through a number of staff people. I'm getting older as this is going along. I would like to see it before I lose all my hair and my beard just goes away.
Thank you, Jimmy. Mr. West?
Thank you, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Joel West from Safe South O. As you might imagine, the South O residents have a very strong interest and concern about the future of Buccaneer Park and the area surrounding it. So we've been very vocal in both getting the community involved and asking for more community involvement and helping the community provide their input. So I'm a little bit disappointed on behalf of Commissioner Rosales and the rest of the commission that you do not have the map the city has developed in response to public request showing all the 6 projects, well, 5 of the 6 projects that are going on at this location. So I'd encourage you to get a copy of that. The 5 projects are the Loma Alta Creek, which being presented today, the bathroom replacement, the wastewater treatment plant decommissioning, which does not include the use of the unused land, but that's obviously a very high priority for the community. The coastal rail trail is being completed from Oceanside to Morse, and that's going out for seeking public funding, but that's under design right now, and that would include a bridge over Low Malta Creek. And then I'm on the advisory committee representing the community for replacing the existing Morse to Eaton Street coastal rail trail, which is about 6 feet and needs to be more like 14 feet, be up to modern standards. So those are 5 projects. And then obviously, you know, the Re-Beach project, putting more sanding on the beach, that the people of Buccaneer and South O would really like to have sand and not cobble on their beach. And so all of the artist's conceptions for the various consultants have included some sort of sand replenishment for Buccaneer. So those are the 6 things going on. And it's my understanding, not being a city employee, but I've heard from city employees, at least 4 or 5 of these projects have regular meetings talking about how the projects affect each other. And we like to think in South O that we had something to do with that, because we've kind of felt asking people about their project, they'd say, oh, you got to talk to this person. And nobody knew where they were doing. So I would encourage maybe the Planning Commission to even get an overall briefing on this, because it's going to be hard to understand how to approve each of these ones in isolation unless you see the whole big picture. So in any event, we know this particular one is coming forward at this particular time because of the availability of funding for wetlands restoration. And obviously, we're in support of all of these projects being done in some way, shape, or form. And so the community has been very much backing. And obviously, this question of the underpass, which is currently the only access from the west side of the east side of the rail to the west side of the rail, that is going to be preserved, even though it's not really fully at standard because it's kind of skinny and it's multi-use. And so the new coastal rail trail between Morse and Eaton, we hope, will provide a bigger crossover south of Morse Street to make it easier to get back and forth. But that's probably 3 or 4 years down.
Thank you, Mr. West. Any other slips?
Chair Rosales, that concludes our slips.
Great, thank you. Shannon, I don't know if you cover this in your presentation, but what is the funding piece on this, external funding piece?
Chairman Rosales, I'm going to turn it over to Justin to answer that question for you.
Yeah, great question, Chair Rosales. So this project is, first of all, it's not required for any regulatory compliance. It's not mitigation for anything. It's purely a habitat and public access project. It's funded through numerous sources, 100% grant funded, actually. So initially, the Coastal Conservancy awarded the city a Prop 1 grant. That was the water bonds back from 2014, voter-approved water bonds. For planning and design, we received additional planning and design funds from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, the Coastal Resilience Fund grant program. And we also received, for construction funding, Fish and Wildlife, United States Fish and Wildlife Service, National Coastal Wetlands Conservation Grant for $1 million, and about another $1 million in change from the Ocean Protection Council for construction as well. And we're currently awaiting the decision on a potential additional funding award from the Fish and Wildlife Foundation.
So with all those grants in hand, I think you said 100% of the costs will be covered?
We don't really know until we send the project out to bid.
Yeah.
So we have 100% covered all of the construction design documents, the CEQA analysis, the planning, the public outreach. That's all been 100% grant funded. Our engineer cost estimate projected to 2023, given the inflation rates, we believe that we're within the 10 to 15% margin of having it fully funded for phase 1. But again, we're hearing from our capital improvement project engineers that some project bids are coming in at 30% higher than what they were a year and a half ago.
Yeah, they are. Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
What would be the total estimated cost?
Phase 1 projected to this year's cost is about $2.1 million.
And that's this year's phase, the whole thing?
So phase 1 is the subject of tonight's approval. Phase 2 would include an additional 1.1 acres, but that would require the city to secure ownership of additional privately owned property.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Nope. Okay, we're being asked to approve the development plan. I'll entertain a motion or...
I'll make the motion.
Great, go ahead.
I make the motion that we approve Development Plan D23-00011 by adopting Planning Commission Resolution number 2023-P26 with findings and conditions of approved attached herein.
Great, thank you. We have a motion for approval. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. Let's go ahead and vote. I'm sorry, we have a motion. We don't have a second yet.
A second.
And we now have a second. Thank you, Commissioner Anthony. Now let's go ahead and vote.
Show that the motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. Thank you both for bringing this to us.
Great
Looks like
project.
Looks like a great project, yep. Good luck. Okay, we have not much left on our agenda. We do not have anything under appeal of city planner's determination tonight, no discussion items, no miscellaneous action items. So we will go to city planner and commissioner reports. I don't think I have anything tonight other than I feel obligated to, in the absence of Commissioner Morrissey, to say that the group that he's very closely associated with, Oceanside's Finest, which is an organization that raises funds for kids in the community to play basketball and covers essentially all their costs, had their fundraiser last Thursday. It was very well attended. I was there, and Louise was there, and Dennis was there, and Commissioner Malik contributed some funding, and the spirit of Commissioner Dodds was there as well, because I know he's a big basketball fan, but it was a really good, well-attended event, and they raised quite a bit of money. So outstanding organization, so kudos to Vice Chair Morrissey for being a part of that. Aside from that, I don't have anything, so we'll go to our Vice Chair Morrissey, who's out this evening. Commissioner Ballmer, go ahead. Any report?
No report.
Thank you. Commissioner Anthony?
No report.
Commissioner Dodds?
No report.
And Commissioner Malik?
No report.
And Commissioner Ogden is also absent tonight, so City Planner, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Rosales. Just to go over a couple upcoming items to this body and the City Council that are planning related. It appears that there's going to be no items for the meeting on December 4th, so that meeting looks to be canceled. The meeting on December 18th, we have a conditional use permit and development plan for a new fire station number 8 within Ocean Ranch that I described to you at our last meeting. It's located just east of the existing Kaiser facility there in Ocean Ranch. And then we don't have anything scheduled beyond that. Moving on to City Council, at the meeting on December 6th, the appeal of the Avocado Road project will be considered by the City Council. At the meeting on December 20th, the Pacifica project that this body considered a couple meetings ago will be considered by the City Council for final approval. Also on that meeting date, we're prepared to take forward the amendment to the STR ordinance. So that will go to the City Council with the recommendation that this body made tonight. And then finally, at the meeting of January 10th, 2024, the appeal of the Loma Alta Terraces project will be heard that night. That concludes my report to the Planning Commission.
Yeah, so we wouldn't convene again until January, is that right? 18th
December 18th,
Okay,
yes. Yep.
great. Very good. Okay, I believe that concludes our agenda for this evening, so we are adjourned.